but I forgot to. The world today is undergoing many changes at an exponential rate. Unless the person has been living under a rock, we have all been a witness to this. We have several suttas from the Nikayas, from the Pali canon, the suttas, the discourses, where we find the original teachings of Lord Buddha, where he talks about the end of days, as it were, how we can identify whether we are nearing them or in them. I like to introduce students, listeners, to suttas that are not often discussed or even made aware of for people, that are extremely important, especially given the time and space we live in. So for today, I was intending on just doing one sutta, but I wanted to add a few others because they need to go hand in hand and because they complement each other, given their significance. So the original sutta for today was supposed to be Tatiyaanāgatabhaya Sutta. Bhaya means fear, terror. Tatiya means the third, part 3. It comes in group of 4. Patama, Dutiya, Tatiya, and Chatubhiya. So this would be the third from those group of 3 terrors yet to come. Yet to come, that is 2,600 years ago when Lord Buddha was saying. But to kind of complement that, to support that, could you hook up the power, please? Turn on the power. Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, because I would like to get Lord Buddha's statue in there. I'll speak louder, don't worry. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. So that would be, that was the original, the only sutta that I was going to talk about. However, I also decided to include, while you were sitting, 2 suttas from the Sutta Nipata, which is the earliest, one of the earliest books that we have, the earliest suttas of the canon. They're so like from the earliest days that Lord Buddha and his disciples talk about these suttas in the Nikayas. In other suttas, they talk about these specific discourses. In fact, there were no writing system at that time for sacred books, so it was a taboo to write anything to do with those teachings. So what people would do is they would remember and recite and learn it by heart. So one of the ways that Lord Buddha would see if a student, if a bhikkhu has studied, was to call him over and ask him, hey, could you please recite from the, he wouldn't say the Sutta Nipata, but he would give, let's say, the chapters. For example, the Uraga Vagga. Uraga means the snake, which is the very first book of the Sutta Nipata. And it's also the name of the first sutta of that book, of that chapter. And these 2 suttas that I selected to incorporate in the main sutta of today come from the Sutta Nipata's first chapter. Sutta number 1.1 and 1.5. You can put something on top of those so that they don't flip. One of the books would suffice. So without further ado, I'd like to jump to the Sutta Nipata, but I will do it in reverse. So I'll go over the Sutta number 1.5, which is Cunda Sutta, from the Uraga Vagga. And also after that, Sutta number 1.1, which is Uraga Sutta, the first sutta of the entire Sutta Nipata. By the way, these two I will put up on the website. So all the suttas that I cover, they will be in PDF form on the website, so you could have access. Currently, I'm doing the whole Sutta Nipata, the book, because the translations were unsatisfactory. So I'm redoing those, so that one day maybe we could compile them into one book, because they're almost like riddles. For a person living in the 21st century, we don't have time to sit there and poetically digest and process. Oh, this could be this could be that. It leaves too much for creative interpretation, which the Dhamma does not give us that luxury. So in Pali, they're beautiful, but in English or any of the other European languages, they don't flow that well. So you have to unravel each of the words, and then you have a bigger, more beautiful, contextually rich, with depth of meaning type of sentences. Verses come alive. And that is what I have been working on this past, actually starting from January, I believe, or maybe December of this year. So hopefully by the end of this year, it will be done. So without further ado, Cunda Sutta, Sutta Nipata 1.5. In English would be discourse to Cunda. Cunda is a person. By the way, he is the same person that many people have wrongfully accused as the person who killed the Buddha, because he offered a very bad meal. Unfortunately, I still come across individuals who still do such a wrong interpretation and a wrong service to the Dhamma. Many of them are bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are at fault to perpetuate such a wrong interpretation, because within the suttas itself, in several suttas, whether you have the Udana or you have the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and in other places, the Anguttara Nikaya, you see how Lord Buddha, especially in the Mahaparinibbana of Digha Nikaya, he's telling Ananda, make sure that future generations don't judge Cunda. This has nothing to do with him. I was nearing the end of my life. And plus, he made the most expensive food that any layman could make. Excuse me. And that is truffles. Truffles, modern day we call truffles. And in Italian, it's called tartufo. Wherever you go in the world, it's expensive, including India of those days. But they used to call it sukara maddava, sweet meat, and the word pig. Well, if you've ever eaten truffles, well done, I mean nicely done, you know that the truffles can also taste like meat. They're sweet in texture and flavor. And plus, the only animal in those days that could go and find them was a pig. But some ignorant person who was trying to also deify Lord Buddha by trying to make him a god, saw that act as a very unwholesome act. How could you give Lord Buddha a bad pork? Even when I was first starting my studies in the Dhamma, the teachers were telling me the beginning of the teachings, and especially when they got to this part, guess what they said? Sukara Madhava was a very bad pork dish that Lord Buddha ate and messed his stomach up and he died. Terrible. So in my small effort, I'm trying to change all that. I'm not the only one, because I found a book years ago written by a layman. I think his last name was Jayasingha, from the US. He also wrote on this, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. So people are waking up. So this is Cunda, the goldsmith, the same Cunda. He was, by the way, a noble disciple, an Arya Savaka. I don't know if he was, I have never come across whether he was a Sotapanna or Sakadagami or even Anagami, but he was a noble disciple. We know that much, especially given the questions he would ask. They are they're kind of questions that come from a depth of understanding and curiosity that is deeper than just superficial interest in the Dhamma. You know that he was a practitioner. All right, let's go. Cunda Sutta. Cunda, the goldsmith, asked the Blessed One, "May I ask the boundlessly wise King of the Dhamma, the Lord Buddha, the most excellent charioteer, who is firmly grounded with both feet, the one without any craving in his heart, the following question." So you see how many, this comes from a person who has seen the Dhamma. This comes from a person with deep veneration, true veneration towards one's own teacher. He's not just throwing accolades and adjectives. How many types of recluses are to be found in the world? Samanas, recluses. And the Blessed One replied, "Cunda, there are to be found only these 4 types of recluses in the world, without a 5th. Now that you have asked me about them, I will go ahead and reveal them to you. These 4 are the winner of the path, the teacher who points out the path, the one who lives the path, and the one who defiles the path, sullies, dirties it. And who is the one, Blessed Lord, whom the Buddha has described as the winner of the path?" asked Cunda, the goldsmith. "And how does one become an unequaled teacher who points out the path and the one who lives the path? Also, please explain to me the one who defiles the path." "The one who has crossed the ocean of doubts, having pulled out the arrow of sorrow, rid himself of all kinds of wanting, only lives for Nibbana. He now serves as the guide for the world, along with its devas. It is such a person whom the Buddhas call winner of the path." So when a person says they are, well, a Sotapanna will never say, "I'm a Sotapanna." Let's say we're talking about such a person. Lord Buddha just defines that person for us. He just did. They become a role model for both devas and humans. You start aspiring towards such people, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not. You are here today, listening to the Dhamma, sat through a whole day of meditating, meeting your hindrances, because somewhere in your past you have been moved by such a person. That's why we come to the Dhamma. There is at least one tiny seed inside each of you that is calling, that is irritating you in a good way. Like, it's like that tiny little grain of sand that goes inside of a clam, an oyster, when it opens and closes to filter its food. And that tiny grain of sand irritates it enough so that it can turn it into a pearl. And that's what we're trying to do. We are pleasantly irritated because we have come across at least one person who has moved us, to inspire us, to make us be wondering, you mean to say there's a state like that? Yes, absolutely. And that's what Lord Buddha just defined, the winner of the path. That's why we call it stream winner. Sotapanna. Sometimes we say stream enterer, That's kind of like a weird statement. Stream winner, because you're now in the stream. There's no way you're going to come out. Even if you're very, very lazy, it's going to take you at the most 7 lifetimes. At the very most. And the suttas never list anyone who has had 7 lives. Usually it's a lot less. The one who knows the highest as being the highest is the one who explains and elaborates on the Dhamma. He, being the unshakable remover of doubts, is the second bhikkhu, the teacher who points out the path. So that's the teacher who explains and elaborates it. Living with restraint according to the well-taught Dhamma, going about life fully alert and developing himself with blameless conduct. It is he who is the third bhikkhu among the 4, the one living the path. Disguising himself as being virtuous, the insolent and recklessly shameful corrupter of families, living with deceit like a highway robber, the hypocrite and the useless chaff. Chaff is the on top of the rice, the one that you throw away. The useless chaff is himself the one who defiles the path. That's the 4th recluse. Now, on hearing this explanation, a householder who is truly a noble disciple, you can see almost Lord Buddha pointing at Cunda, understands its meaning, and as a result, sees recluses for who and what they truly are, without being fooled by appearances. And today we are royally fooled with appearances. It's all about appearances today. How many followers you have. This bhikkhu's robes are beautiful. They must have been done with silk from Varanasi, Kasi silk or something. Things have really become decrepit. And this sutta goes along with hinting at what it is that we need to look for and how to distinguish. In this manner, householders will not lose the faith in their hearts, knowing full well who to place their faith in. For how could the evil be equated with the uncorrupted, or the pure with the impure? Knowing is extremely important. Having knowledge of suttas is extremely important. Over the course of years, every time I've spoken and elaborated on some sutta, where I have, let's say, a listener who comes later on and says, I've never known about that sutta. Where did you get that from? Could you tell me where it is, this and that? That changed my view of things. My narrative has changed, the person says. When I ask them why, they say, I didn't know. I didn't know. Well, these resources are available. One of them is this, and it's being recorded. It will be going online, so you can listen to it and hear it. Most importantly, go and check the resources. That's why I give you the sutta number. You go and look at it. You read it, and you practice, and you process it with your own living experience and see if what you are reading, you are also witnessing in the world around you. That's how you know if it is true or not. So that was Cunda Sutta. And before my throat really fails, I will go through the Uraga Sutta, which is the snake sutta from the first book. This is Sutta Nipata, again from the same books, we call it group of discourses, number 1.1. When anger arises within his heart, the bhikkhu quickly tosses it out, much like medicinal herbs that expel the venom of the wound received from a snake bite. When the snake bites, venomous snake, one of the quickest things, I don't know if modern medicine approves of this, but traditionally, so long as you don't hopefully have a cavity in your teeth, you need to first and foremost try to suck out the venom. you just suck it out. When you suck it out, you're disrupting the venom's flow into the bloodstream. And you toss it out a few times. You never swallow the saliva. You do it a few times, and hopefully you get all of it out. And then you apply whatever medicinal herbs that could still go ahead and extract more of it, so it doesn't go into, if it's going to do you in neurological damage or hematological blood, affecting the blood, coagulating, etc. But again, medicine, I don't know modern medicine, what it says about this. So that is what traditionally I have learned, survival skills in the wild, basically. Thus, the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. So even though Lord Buddha talked about the snake bite, and that's why this is called the Snake Sutta, and because the very first sutta of this entire book and the chapters is this sutta, is called Uraga Sutta. So the chapter on snake, because this last line will be repeated throughout these verses. The bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. You will never find a snake going back and huddling and attaching and grabbing and kissing goodbye to its old skin. In fact, you will see the snake struggling and scraping itself against rocks, against itself, its own skin, rubbing itself to peel off the dead skin, the used up skin. This is Sutta number 1.1, SNP, S capital, NP small case, lowercase, 1.1. And it will be on the website in the Pali Suttas section. We can send Theo the link to that, Brother Theo. The bhikkhu, this is the second verse. The bhikkhu pulls out lust completely from its roots, like the plucking of lotuses with both flower and stalk combined. I know in Asia, I've seen this in Sri Lanka, I know in Vietnam they do this, in Thailand also, where you will find people selling you, especially close to shrines, lotuses with the stalk in there. Sometimes they even eat the stalk because it's very sweet, they say. I haven't tasted them, but I'm sure they are. So Lord Buddha's using that example of pulling out both lotus and the stalk with it. So a true bhikkhu is a person who's pulled out lust like that from its roots. Thus the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. Please remember, no rituals will do this for you. No amount of bowing will do this for you. No amount of chanting will do this for you. No amount of dana will do this for you, in fact. Some people don't like to hear that because they've invested a lot in dana. I say invested because last week I was giving a talk on the Dana Mahaphala Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, and in it Lord Buddha is talking about dana as investment that people do. And for them, the rewards will be far less than a person who rejoices when they're giving it at that time with the intention to really change their life and the lives of others, especially for the sake of the sasana. So it is your work, working on your own, on yourself, and not some rituals that will pull out lust from its roots, pull out anger from its roots. It's how you decide. Not even the rules of training rules, not even your vinaya will do that. Your precepts will not do that. If you're doing it mechanically. I know people who say, this many precepts, I have this many rules. And then you look at them closely. Some of you are smiling, smirking almost, because you know these people exist around us. That's part of ritual, ritualistic lifestyle. Remember, there's the part of right lifestyle or right livelihood in the Noble Eightfold Path. It must be reflected there. The bhikkhu dries up craving in his heart, making it remainderless, much like the drying up of a swiftly flowing shallow stream. Thus the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. If you don't give it attention, meaning you don't leave the faucet running, it will dry. If I keep doing exposing my eyes to the same type of influences, I'm going to still continue thinking like that, behaving like that. Remember the first part of right effort? Close the door so that the rats won't come in. The bhikkhu washes away entirely the conceit from his heart, much like a mighty flood sweeps away a frail bridge made of bamboo. Thus the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. The bhikkhu, having looked at his existences, finding no essence anywhere in them, is like the one who goes looking for flowers on a fig tree, never finding one. Have you ever found a flower on a fig tree? There's none you will find. In fact, I used to wonder when I would look in Lebanon, where I was born, there were many fig trees. And there were other types of trees too, but the other trees, fruit trees, would give flowers. But then, to my astonishment, the fig tree would give us figs, but no flowers. So I had to really wrap my mind around that. So, and here we have a story, an analogy that Lord Buddha makes. With no anger left in him, the bhikkhu has no desires for becoming anymore, anywhere. Thus, the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. We don't long for a birth somewhere other than here. In time, you had different parts of different traditions show up in the sasana who advocated or who continue to advocate just that, a birth in another realm. They call it pure land or something. You have this, Western paradise, Eastern paradise. You go to Vajrayana, there's also the Eastern paradise. But probably there's Northern paradise and Southern paradise, I don't know. But none of these things are places that Lord Buddha encouraged us to go to. In fact, he would warn bhikkhus that they had failed if they get a rebirth in a heavenly realm. They have failed in living the brahmacharya, the holy life. Our goal is much higher than the 31 realms of existence. Not just for bhikkhus, by the way. All. Everyone whose ears catch some segment of the Dhamma needs to pay attention to this. Because so long as you're still caught in the 31 layers of existence, I don't care how high up in the Brahma realms you might end up, how many billions of years you might live, still there is a finish date, expiration date, a shelf life from which you will fall, all of us. And then usually we fall to even far lower realms than that, than the human realm. The only way to cut our access to the lower realms is by becoming a Sotapanna. That is undebatable. No amount of sutta reading will give us that, though. No amount of dana will give us that, ultimately. It is your practice of the three trainings, sila, samadhi, panya, especially samadhi, which takes you to panya. When I say especially, some people might think sila is secondary. No. I say especially because there's a lot of people today who say meditation is not that important. You just have to understand and figure it out. That's nonsense. The understanding comes thanks to those two previous steps, sila, samadhi working together like this. The bhikkhu, having cut the flow of ceaseless thinking, has no more inner agitation left in him. Like I wrote on the board, the diagram, ceaseless thinking, becoming anxious, restless, distracted, that's ceaseless thinking. Ceaseless thinking also is a term for analysis. Analyzing. That's why a person who's simply a scholar of Dhamma, I don't care how many PhDs you have ceaseless thinking. In fact, all those degrees really are working against you if you really attach yourself to them. Thus, the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. No longer confused whether to go this way or that, the bhikkhu with certitude now in his heart has left all mental proliferations behind him. Coming up with imagery, coming up with possibilities, what ifs. In Pali, we have a term for it called papanchas, mental proliferations. That's what the ceaseless thinking does. Images, possibilities, what ifs. Usually it's at the brunt of worries. And that's what the society, the mainstream media is throwing at us constantly. Fear, fear, fear. How can we make you more panicky? How can we terrorize you more? They just have to give us images and we take off. We make it far worse. Now, certain beyond any doubt about the path he is on, the bhikkhu knows full well how all things in the world are not what they seem. Having left behind him all recollections of the past and expectations of the future, no longer fooled by the world, the bhikkhu lives without any covetousness left in his heart. Being free from his past and future, and yes, I just read that. So the same thing about hatred, same thing about delusion. So I'm just jumping because I want to save my voice for the next sutta. With nothing for him to take personally, nor become inflamed about, the bhikkhu now has no cause for re-becoming. That means there is no conceit left in him, no comparing and contrasting. Today we live in a society of comparison. How much do you have? How much do you make? How many degrees do you have? Which university did you graduate from? What year? We're always calculating. You go to a gathering, an assembly, a party, a birthday party, and when people don't know you and they approach you, the first thing they will ask is, what do you do after you tell them your name? What do you do? Nobody asks you, how are you? How is your sila? I would love that to be the question. For example, in the case of bhikkhus, there's this thing that they do, which is quite facetious. It's also very, very derogatory in many ways for intelligence and wisdom. And that is this: how many vassas do you have? Without asking you about how you're doing, how is your sila? See, I'd rather someone come and ask me, Bhante, how is your sila? I will not become offended at all. I will feel encouraged because this person's priority is sila. Nobody asks you that. How is your samadhi, Bhante? Instead, they say, how many vassas you have? Because what they're doing is they're figuring out the pecking order. Who will be getting to the first of the line in the pindapada or in the food? Who will be bowing to whom? These are things that lay people don't know about much or think about much. But this is what really happens in the Sangha these days. Unless you come across that very unique bhikkhu, very, very unique, one in probably 100,000, that looks at you as a human being and looks at you as, I wonder how much Dhamma they have in your heart. That would be a good question to ask. Not how many vassas, because there's a lot of idiots with over 60 years of vassas. I once met a Mahatera with 50 vassas, telling me a joke that I would feel offended even if I were a layman, and I'm not a layman. And he was surprised that I didn't laugh at the joke. So what vassas are we talking about? Vassas are like rituals, are not like numbers. This chair might have more vassas than I, or many, many Mahateras might have. We have ludicrous measuring methodologies, comparing and contrasting, full of conceit. And that's what we're going to see in a minute. Having wisely used and overcome the 5 hindrances on the wall that you have over there. The 5 hindrances: sensual lust or desires, kamachanda, vyapada, which is ill will, tinamida, which is sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, uddacha kukucha, and vichikiccha, which is skeptical doubt. The bhikkhu now lives unburdened, free, untroubled, safe, and secure. Thus, the bhikkhu gives up this shore and the one beyond, much like a snake giving up its used up skin. So now I will take us to the main sutta of the day. So hopefully that is going to serve as those 2 suttas as a way to compare, in a sense, the suttas and see what Lord Buddha meant by terror, which we'll see here, by fear, bhaya. This would be Anguttara Nikaya 5.79, AN 5.79, which is, AN stands for Anguttara Nikaya 5.79. And if you put your contacts, if Sister Dhammadina has your contacts, she could send you the link to the PDF, so you don't have to worry about recording in case you get it wrong. So, Tatiyaanāgatabhaya Sutta, on terrors yet to come, part 3. Let me just... Bhikkhus, these 5 are future terrors to come that are not yet here, but they will arrive in the future. You should be alert to them and make a strong effort to abandon them when they do arrive. What are these 5? 1. Bhikkhus. In the future, there will be bhikkhus who will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior, sila. Similarly with their mental cultivation, samadhi, and therefore severely lacking in their wisdom, panya. And although they will give the higher ordination to others, upasampada, which is the ordaining someone as a bhikkhu, but they themselves will be unable to discipline them in the higher virtues. This is adisila. There's sila, which is the 227 rules that we have to live by as bhikkhus. But that is the lower, think of it, not the higher virtuous behavior that a bhikkhu must be trained in. And that is when the bhikkhu develops character beyond the word, beyond what is visible. Oh, is he practicing this and this and that and this and that? Whatever. You know, there's a lot of minor rules that Lord Buddha had to devise because there were a lot of interesting characters that were coming in and becoming ordained as bhikkhus. people who didn't have common sense or even common decency. They were becoming bhikkhus. People who didn't have consideration for someone else. So rules had to be made for those people. But for over 20 years, the Sangha did not have any of those rules. It's only when certain characters showed up that Lord Buddha was forced to put out these rules. And at the end of his life, he reached over to Ananda and said, when the Sangha decides to abolish these minor rules, when you do become developed as real human beings, with common sense, where human beings, whoever's becoming a bhikkhu, has common decency or consideration towards others, then you can go ahead and abolish them because they're not needed. So many of these are not needed. For example, a lay woman comes, or any woman comes and offers me tea when I'm coughing, or just offers me a glass of water. One of the minor rules might be saying, oh, you can't hand it over to me directly. You have to place it on a special cloth that I will place on the table, and you put the glass over there, and then you walk away, you remove your hands from it, I pull the cup towards me, and then I will have the freedom to touch because your dirty hands are not on it, or something. It's ridiculous. One time I was watching a clip of a Mahatera arriving at a monastery in Europe. And after a long trip, one would say at least 20 hours or 16 to 20 hours, he's finally there at night. And there's a bhikkhu and a bhikkhuni, or a nun, a female basically in robes. Both of them, in their eagerness, they reached out to open the door handle, to open the door for this Mahatera to come out. The nun reached out first by impulse because she wants to open the door out of respect. Now, the bhikkhu also wanted to reach out first. He didn't make it. She got to touch the door handle, and then he touched her hand. Quickly, he pulled his hand back as if he just touched a very hot furnace. And then she, realizing this, she pulled her hand because she was like, oh, there's a hierarchy issue. I think I might have overstepped. Oh, I think I might have broken a precept or a minor rule. And then this is happening very quickly, by the way. And then he reaches over again, but by impulse, she reached again. And then they touched again. And then she pulled the hand and he pulled her hand. So this went on at least 3 times, each of them. Finally, one of them, I don't know which one, opened the door. It's ridiculous. It's simply ridiculous. Lord Buddha was the Buddha, the king of the Dhamma. He didn't have time for this kind of nonsense, but he was dealing with Putujanas who didn't calculate, who didn't have consideration. They were looking at a woman, even in robes. Whether she was a bhikkhuni or a laywoman, they were still looking when they went on Pindapada. So we have rules never to look at a person, male or female. Lord Buddha never cared for such rules. For us, it's just the most important rules that are called the defeats. Those are the things that we need to stay away from, like killing and stealing and sexual intercourse, all these things. Because the person might even practice so-called abstaining from, abrahmacharya, from sex, all kinds of sex, but the person might be talking about it, like that 50-year vassa, or even worse, undetectably, in their mind, in their hearts. How can you practice Vinaya with that? So Lord Buddha, when he's saying they're unable to discipline in the higher virtues, an arahant or a noble disciple type of a bhikkhu, they are sila. They live, we don't call it sila anymore, it's called adi sila. Higher virtue means adi sila. This is the next level of sila. It's beyond. just the 227. Unable to discipline them in the higher mind, adicitta, and in the higher wisdom, adipanya. Then, similar to their own preceptors, those ordained bhikkhus too will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior. Similarly with their mental cultivation, and therefore, severely lacking in their wisdom. And these two in turn will give the higher ordination to others, but will be unable to discipline them in the higher virtues, the higher mind, and the higher wisdom. Have you ever made a copy of a drawing or a copy of a paper that had some writing on it, but it was unclear, the first copy, the original, or it had a scratch on it, or it had a line? You put it on the Xerox machine, you make copies. Will the copies have that stain on it, that marking, that error? Now you take that copy of the one that was made with the error on it, not the original, the copy of the original, and you Xerox that 100 times. Do those have the marking still? Yes. And then you take those copies and you Xerox those. And then you take those, each of those, and you Xerox. What I'm describing is basic common sense. If you have bad originals, you're going to get bad copies. That's what Lord Buddha is talking about. You have bad original, bad copies coming up. And those bhikkhus also will be unable to discipline them in the higher virtues, in the higher mind, and in the higher wisdom. In this manner, bhikkhus, by corrupting the Dhamma, the Vinaya discipline also becomes corrupted. By corrupting the Dhamma, the Vinaya also becomes corrupted. It doesn't matter how many rules the person keeps. You have traditions today within the Buddhist monasticism, or Sangha, to be proper, that place the Vinaya higher than the Dhamma. Oh, it's okay. The Vinaya also has the Dhamma. Yes, that is true. But Lord Buddha did not just give us Vinaya. He gave us the Dhamma first. First came the Dhamma. Unfortunately, you have entire traditions within Buddhist monasticism that the bhikkhus don't know much about the suttas. What they have is the example of teachers within that tradition, which is a terrible, terrible idea to follow. Because soon enough, there will be teacher worship. And when I say soon enough, it has already happened. Now you go back to those teachers that they're worshiping, and you see the teachers themselves had a very high reverence, loving, devotional, beautiful relationship towards the Buddha. But the students, that's a different story. You cannot substitute the Dhamma with anything, including the Vinaya. They go hand in hand. And similarly, by corrupting the Vinaya, the Dhamma itself becomes corrupted. There was one bhikkhu I met in Europe, and he showed me what he was wearing when he would go out. He wouldn't be wearing robes, the chivara. He wouldn't be wearing the lower, upper, the third, Sanghati. He showed me something that looked eerily familiar to what Christian monks would wear. I know because I used to be training to become a Christian monk years ago in my late teenage years. Except that their version would be black. There's also I forgot the name of it, the white. He was not wearing the white. It was almost my color, but maybe a little bit lighter. And I said, what is this? And then he started explaining to me as to why he should be wearing that, because Europeans don't respect him otherwise. He won't be able to sit down with politicians and with influential people with this. That is corrupting the Vinaya. One simple example. Of course, there are many others. This bhikkhus is the first of the 5 terrors to come that are not yet here, but they will arrive in the future. You should be alert to them and make a strong effort to abandon them when they do arrive. So the fact that I'm providing you with examples from living situations that I personally have encountered, or perhaps you have as well, I think it goes without saying that we are living the first of these terrors. All you have to do is look online and you see, you have about 6-7 years ago, there was a headline news in Thailand, front page news in Thailand, where you had these 2 Theravada bhikkhus sitting in a private jet. In a private jet, side to side, with Louis Vuitton bags next to them. In case I didn't know Louis Vuitton, but as a layman, I was like, what's there a big deal about this? And they said, oh, you don't understand. It's thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. Bhikkhus in a private jet with Louis Vuitton bags, each. The bag I have has been actually trampled on in the streets of Europe. I stitch it, I sutured it to keep it in shape. It's made of cotton, I think. It is sad, especially when the bhikkhus got up later on to defend themselves, and they said, oh, relax, it was from the Dayakas. The supporters provided us with the jet. But the newspaper people really tore into it. I don't know what happened afterwards. And Thailand is a very traditional Buddhist country, as we all know. This is not just about Thailand we're talking. You go anywhere, you see this, unfortunately. Next, Lord Buddha talks about the second terror. Bhikkhus. In the future, there will be bhikkhus who will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior. If you notice, this first line is almost like a prefix, the first, like a standard for each of these segments to follow. Because if we lack in the development of virtue, in the development of the mind, samadhi, in the development of panya, then all hell's going to break loose. The sasana is lost. And although they will provide dependence to others during their primary monastic years, but will be unable to discipline them in the higher virtues, the higher mind, and in the higher wisdom, then similarly to their own preceptors, their upajayas, the ones who make a person become a bhikkhu, who's presiding over, those ordained bhikkhus too will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship. Similarly, will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior. Similarly, with their mental cultivation, and therefore severely lacking in their wisdom. And these two in turn will provide dependence to others during their primary monastic years, but will be unable to discipline them in the higher virtues, in the higher mind, and in the higher wisdom. As bhikkhus, aside from previous training that we should have gotten, usually there is about 5 years, not the upajjhaya decides this finally. There are individual cases. We see this in Lord Buddha's example, in him taking bhikkhus, ordaining. Sometimes they don't even go, many times. Lord Buddha would say, Ehi bhikkhu, that was their ordination. That was done. They didn't need any training as such, preliminary training. But over time, there was also the novice training. Usually it was reserved for individuals 20 years and younger. because to become a bhikkhu, to be ordained as a bhikkhu, you must be at least 20. There have been, I think, a few, very few, if any, unique exceptions, if I'm not mistaken. But usually, you have to be at least 20 at the very least. So, after you become a bhikkhu, usually you have 5 years. And your upajjhaya, your preceptor, says, okay, your nisaya, or the dependence, we call that dependence, depending on your preceptor, because you are not fully to be blamed, because you're still in training. Even though you're a bhikkhu, you have had your novice training anywhere from 6 months to sometimes 3 years. After you become ordained as a bhikkhu, you have 5 years. Usually, that's the case. In some cases, the teacher, the upajjhaya, after careful investigation, especially if the person has been in the service of the Dhamma, that did not come from a different religion straight away and wanting to become a bhikkhu, because for that, Lord Buddha made another requisite. He would say, you have to stay in probation for about 4 months. You see this many times in the suttas. But again, Lord Buddha would decide, probing the mind of the bhikkhu to be. And oftentimes, even though Lord Buddha says 4 months, the person says it because they're moved or they became sotapanna. They say, Bhante, it really doesn't matter even if you put me on probation for 4 years. I will wait until the bhikkhus, the Sangha bhikkhus, deem it appropriate. And Lord Buddha says, you don't need it, come. So he just ordains them. Not to trivialize it anyway, but it's so beautiful because it's a case-by-case basis. However, because we're dealing with Puthujjanas all around the world, these rules are necessary. And we don't have people or teachers of the caliber of Lord Buddha who can penetrate the mind to see whether this person is qualified or not. So there's that. Now the third terror. Bhikkhus, in the future, there will be bhikkhus who will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly would not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior, mental cultivations, and wisdom. And as these bhikkhus engage in discussions on the Dhamma, due to their lack in practice and therefore genuine understanding, they will decline into evil ways by teaching and living according to what is adhamma. There is such, such a thing, adhamma. There's dhamma, there's adhamma. Just like there's kusala, there's akusala. Adhamma is anything that is not dhamma. Anything that you become suspicious about in a behavior of someone, or a teaching that doesn't resonate well with your heart. Usually it means it goes against the sutta. Somebody's trying to convince you of something that is never to be found in the 84,000 teachings of Lord Buddha's. Teaching and living according to what is adhamma, as they even defend their wrong views when being questioned. I'm very strong when it comes to saying what I understand what the Dhamma represents, at least to me, given what I have seen in the suttas again and again. For decades, I have seen bhikkhus who come and say, please, you don't have to tell me about samadhi practice. I don't need to practice meditation. I do just enough. I am a scholar monk. Scholar monk. I do research. I write about things. I met one recently. He wasn't a full monk, of course, but come, meditate, come. This is an opportunity, come. No, Bhante, no, I'm okay. I said, what do you mean, okay? Well, I am doing Dhamma work. And I said, how is that? I'm doing research. Why aren't you in a library? You don't have to shave your head for that. Go to a library, a decent place. You don't have the noise. Everybody's quiet. And you have plenty of books. You don't have to be in robes or anything. This is one simple example, small example. I've seen this over the course of 30-some years since I started this journey. Even some of my teachers, they were Mahanayaka. They were like entire heads of schools of Buddhist Sangha. I would ask them with so much respect, Bhante, I never see you meditate. I was curious, where do you sit? Which can I see you meditating? I was so naive. I was in my 20s, kid, early 20s. He would say, no, Candana, no. I'm a scholar, monk. I said, what is that, Bhante? He says, I teach the suttas, I teach you how to speak Pali, I teach the commentaries. I said, oh, okay, I guess there is two different branches. Lo and behold, after all these years, I still have not come across a single sutta, a single portion of a sutta, where Lord Buddha says, you over there, the scholarly monks, you don't have to meditate. You, on the other hand, you can meditate. There's no such thing. None. So I don't know where they came from. To me, therefore, this is very much adhamma. You see, a lazy person will come up with many reasons. I know this from my years as a teacher in high school. Students would come, and junior high, they would come and say, sorry, teacher, my dog ate the homework. There's been actual people who said that. My dog ate my homework. I wrote it. I really did my work. I could show you the mathematical equations, but my dog ate it. The work is there. Okay, there's the whiteboard. Here's the marker. Let's go. Show me what you got. I kind of forget because I need the book. Well, here's the book. Caught. This is ludicrous. I tell people, if you don't want to practice, why are you in robes? There's only one reason why we wear robes. Only one. Otherwise, go and become a CPA, certified public accountant. You'll make good money in tax season. Go and become an engineer. Go learn how to become a optometrist. You will help so many people's lives, helping them see better. That's very honorable compared to being a bhikkhu who doesn't deserve the robes, because you're not living the path of a bhikkhu. In this manner, bhikkhus, by corrupting the Dhamma, the Vinaya discipline also becomes corrupted. And similarly, by corrupting the Vinaya, the Dhamma itself becomes corrupted. This, bhikkhus, is the third of the 5 terrors to come that are not yet here, but they will arrive in the future. You should be alert to them and make a strong effort to abandon them when they do arrive. Now, this was spoken by Lord Buddha 2,600 years ago. Please remember that. Terror number 4. Bhikkhus, in the future, there will be bhikkhus who will not be strong enough to persevere, again, the same bodily hardship, and therefore they will not persevere in developing sila, samadhi, panya. Excuse me. And when the words of the Blessed One, the discourses spoken by the Tathagata that are deep in meaning, leading one to the supramundane state, connected with emptiness, are being spoken and recited, they will not want to listen to them or pay close attention to them, or try to apply their minds to them in an effort to grasp their deep meanings. Recently, a very important pillar of the Dhamma, of the Sangha, died. An arahant, living at our time, among us, but in Sri Lanka, in the jungles of Sri Lanka, a monk who was persecuted, a monk who was a treasure house of suttas, of explanation and of attainments. His name was Bhante Katukurunde Nyanananda. Katukurunde Nyanananda. He wrote the magnificent book, Concept and Reality, and he also did the wonderful 33 sermons on Nibbana, sometimes called the mind stilled. And he also did the 20 sermons on Paticcasamuppada, which I narrated in honor to him, because he didn't have the energy to narrate them himself. He was too weak in his later years. I mention him because he was such a bhikkhu who would make Lord Buddha proud. If you had taken him to Lord Buddha's time, he would fit in beautifully as an actual bhikkhu. I also mention him because he was one of those rare bhikkhus, to my knowledge, the only bhikkhu in modern times who spoke about shunyata as a Theravadan bhikkhu, emptiness. Theravadan bhikkhus oftentimes look at anything that's remotely related with the word shunyata as, oh, you're now Mahayana. You sold out. What kind of a bhikkhu are you? So I might as well get up and leave now and not bother about hearing your sermon, your lecture. And here we see a sutta where Lord Buddha specifically says, in the future there will be Sangha, monks that will discourage you to look at suttas that talk about the supramundane, lokuttara, meaning of the suttas, the Dhamma, especially the ones that deal with shunyata, with emptiness. Now, this is different than what we see in Mahayana develop over time, because that became completely philosophical based. Most people don't know that Nagarjuna, Venerable Nagarjuna, was in fact more Theravada than he could ever be Mahayana. Most people don't know this. They even attribute the Heart Sutra to him. They had never done textual analysis, I guess. Katukurunde Nyanananda. Yes, can I write it later? Okay, because I'm completely hooked up here to wires, so, but I will, please remind me. By the way, tomorrow's sutta I chose to be on Chula Sunyata Sutta, which is not discussed. It's from the Majjhima Nikaya, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 121. Sutta MN 121, I think that's the number. But I will cover it tomorrow with you. Deep in meaning, leading on to, people talk about Sigalovada Sutta forever, how to be a good householder. People talk about Samadhiti Sutta, but without understanding the depth of what Venerable Sariputta is saying. So we have to do our own due diligence. Please, you must rely on your own skills at exploring. If you're going to buy, not to trivialize the Dhamma, if you're going to buy a certain food item, let's say bananas or pineapple or papaya, and you know how to distinguish a good papaya from a bad one, a mango that is good from a bad one, how do you know? You've tested them. You've tried them. You probably know how to tap them, or we do all these things to protect us, to get the best deal, as it were. But when it comes to the Dhamma, we just gulp down whatever is thrown at us. Why? Why? If you're going to school, a certain school, you research it from high school. Well, does this school provide this? This university, does it have this? Does it provide this? Or even when you're sending your child there, not just the money, who will their professors be? What do they teach? What do they believe in? What happens when they graduate, the alumni? All these things you calculate, but when it comes to the Dhamma, somehow, sure, we'll study that. Explore, don't be afraid, because you have only this life, as far as we're concerned now. I'm not concerned about your future lives in that sense, where you can postpone. No delay. Lord Buddha had a term called diteva dhamme, in this birth. You have to do it in this birth, whatever you want. When you want to fall in love, you don't say, well, in your 20s, you don't say, well, in my next life, hey, yeah, it'll be nice if I fall in love. If I become happy in my next life. Meanwhile, leave me alone. I'm going to continue being miserable. No one says that. They will not want to listen to them, to these suttas. Pay close attention to them or try to apply their minds to them in an effort to grasp their deep meanings. In fact, these bhikkhus will discourage and minimize in importance the study and learning of the Tathagata's words found within the suttas. Earlier, I was talking about traditions that came up during the past few hundred years within the Theravada that discouraged sutta studying. Vinaya was all there is to it. You don't have to be one of those. Because then they looked at the scholarly monks and they said, oh, they are non-practicing monks, so you don't need the suttas altogether. So basically, that is the quintessential example of throwing the baby with the bathwater. Because on one group, you had scholarly monks, non-practicing, and those who said, we don't need the suttas because we have the Vinaya, were pointing at the scholarly monks and saying, they don't practice. See, they know the suttas, so we don't need to become like them. The suttas had nothing to do with this. That's stupid. The Dhamma is for each of us. Lord Buddha, otherwise, why did he teach? Why did he teach? He didn't just teach Vinaya rules, you know. Even in the Vinaya rules, to get it through those people's thick heads, those putujjanas, even while giving the rules and making amendments to them, Lord Buddha still squeezed in some Dhamma in the Vinaya. That's why the Vinaya also has some Dhamma. But it's nowhere near what you have in the suttas. So one blaming the other, meanwhile, the house is still getting burned with people in it. However, when the words spoken by the Buddha, by the Blessed One have been altered by commentators or other disciples and transformed into poetry using flowery and fancy language, when these are then recited, suddenly these bhikkhus will want to listen to them, as they will respect and worship these words, memorizing them, claiming them as the words of the Blessed One, as it fits their defiled minds. Most traditionally Buddhist countries have people, especially villagers who attend temples a lot, pretty much know few of the suttas completely, the typical ones, Mangala Sutta, Ratana Sutta, etc. Go and ask them whether they know the meaning of a single line from a single verse. And you have many, many monks who use beautiful voices. It's almost like the oratory, like the people who like to say, you know, like orations. There's a sutta once I translated where Lord Buddha is chastising and scolding those bhikkhus who like to sing and allow their voice to just flutter around in the suttas. And he says, he laughs at them in a sense. He says, lay people laugh at you. Do you know that? Because you think you have a beautiful voice and you're singing with so much melody. What is the difference? The lay people are asking, he says. The lay people are coming and asking me, Bhante, when we hear this, we're thinking that this person is a lay person singing a romantic song 2,600 years ago. Because we don't know is he singing a romantic song? Because the tune, the melody, it's like it has those things. It's worldly. And then they come and they ask Lord Buddha, Bhante, this is not appropriate. And then he calls these bhikkhus over and he scolds them. These are the suttas, you idiots. You can't sing like you sing other songs, but that's what you have. You have entire cultures within Theravada countries where the bhikkhu who has the loveliest voice gets the visa faster to come to the West. I've seen them. Because when I was a layman, working as the secretary of the American Buddhist Congress, almost 30 years ago, my teacher, who was also the head of the organization, he said, write a letter, a lovely letter. Because I said, about what, Bhante? It's going to go to the immigration office. Okay, for what, Bhante? Because it will be about this lovely bhikkhu, young bhikkhu, but he has a wonderful voice. You should hear him, Candana, when he sings. I heard, it's like, yeah, it's a pretty appealing voice. Would you like some water? Yeah, could someone? No, please. So, guess what? This bhikkhu did come to the US. And in less than 5 years, he had his own temple. He became the abbot of his own temple. And then 2 years later, I don't hear anything from him. And then I find out from other abbots that he disrobed. But not only did he disrobe, but he went ahead and secured. He went behind the supporters' backs to the bank, sold the house because they had put it under his name. Sold the house, took the money, went back to his home country, married the woman that he loved, who cheated on him. And now he's left with a child. The whole Buddhist community turned against him here, in America. I'm just giving you a background story of something that we don't talk about. Unfortunately, in this culture, it's like everything must be kept hush-hush, otherwise it will damage if something comes out. Meanwhile, people know this over there, but by telling you of these things, you become aware. You become aware and you're more alert to possibilities that are there. You're dealing with human beings. So they worship the words, memorizing them, claiming them as the words of the Blessed One as it fits their defiled minds. In this manner, bhikkhus, by corrupting the Dhamma, the Vinaya discipline also becomes corrupted, and similarly, by corrupting the Vinaya, the Dhamma itself becomes corrupted. This, bhikkhus, is the fourth of the 5 terrors to come that are not yet here, but they will arrive in the future. You should be alert to them and make a strong effort to abandon them when they do arrive. And they have arrived, in case you couldn't tell. And number 5, 5th terror. Bhikkhus, in the future, there will be bhikkhus who will not be strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior. Similarly with their mental cultivation, and therefore severely lacking in their wisdom. At that time, the elder bhikkhus, being themselves not strong enough to persevere bodily hardship, and similarly will not be strong enough to persevere in developing virtuous behavior. Similarly with their mental cultivation, and therefore severely lacking in their wisdom. They will then indulge in a luxurious and comfortable lifestyle, slacking in their practice and development in the Dhamma, as they become leaders in backsliding, falling back, neglecting the work to be done in seclusion, and therefore neither being vigilant nor alert, nor putting in the effort to strive diligently to attain what is yet to be attained, to experience what is yet to be experienced, to realize what is yet to be realized, as they will lack the resolve or desire to do it, to do the holy work. And those bhikkhus to follow them will follow the example of their preceptors. Copy, being dirty, will produce you a dirty copy. slacking in their practice and development in the Dhamma as they too become leaders in backsliding, neglecting the work to be done in seclusion, and therefore neither being vigilant nor alert, nor putting in the effort to strive diligently to attain what is yet to be attained, to experience what is yet to be experienced, to realize what is yet to be realized, as they will lack the resolve or desire to do it. In this manner, bhikkhus, by corrupting the Dhamma, the Vinaya discipline also becomes corrupted. And similarly, by corrupting the Vinaya, the Dhamma itself becomes corrupted. This, bhikkhus, is the fifth of the 5 terrors to come that are not yet here, but they will arrive in the future. You should be alert to them and make a strong effort to abandon them when they do arrive. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We have to be diligent. But don't worry, Lord Buddha is not saying go ahead and start protests. Go and boycott this temple. Go and ask for the resignation of this abbot and that abbot and that abbot. And boy, you're going to have a lot of abbots to kick out who are not willing to let go of their throne. So you have a lot of politics. And it's interesting because in Lord Buddha's time, I've never come across a sutta where you had abbots. You had residing monks in temples, in monasteries, but there were no abbots as far as I know. And Lord Buddha never owned a monastery. He never owned it. People used to make new monasteries for him to come and reside. That's it. He never had his fingerprint or his signature on any deed of a piece of real estate. But this isn't about protest, as I said. This is about you doing your work. The Dhamma is not outside of us. No matter how defiled the world gets, the more terrorizing it gets, it's still not going to defile your heart as much as your own kileshas will. Your own defilements are what you need to watch out for. And the only way you could eradicate, remove, eliminate, destroy your kileshas is by you working on them yourself. Now, I'm pointing these things out, these suttas. These are not stuff that I wrote. These are from the suttas. These are the suttas themselves. It's good to know what's going on instead of blindly just following the herd and pretending that my agreeing to the situation by being silent or by being just doing whatever I'm supposed to be doing as a Buddhist, for example, going and to the Vassas and doing the Uposhata and things like that, that's enough. That's never enough. But it's good to know what's happening and then go to your room and seclude yourself and practice diligently. That is why you're here. If you want to improve the sasana's life, extend it, meditate with longer sits, with more loving attitude, with more genuine sila, with genuine samadhi, and the panya will come. There's only one kind of panya, and that's genuine panya. So I will stop here and open for any questions you might have. Okay. Other than that, any? Yes. I will do that, Brother Tio, so then, because I will then close the Zoom and then do it, but you'll see it. Yes. Yes, and all of the above. you will never find a person who at least has not gotten sick once in their life. Now, there's sickness and there's sickness. There's severe illnesses. There is hitting your foot against the wall type of a bodily hardship. Ask any person who has a toothache, just a single toothache, and they will say, I'd rather die and not face this pain, because it feels like the worst pain ever, especially if it has to do with the nerves. And you ask a person who has a severe migraine, or just somebody who is having seasickness on a boat and they're about to vomit, you really get disgusted by being in this body. So you just want to end it. So pain in all of its gradations will cause hardship. So, but what it doesn't say, it says between the lines, you have to read between the lines in a sense, is that without experiencing these hardships, it really is almost impossible, unless the person has tremendous merits from the past, who have been practicing for a long time and never achieved it. Unless that's the case, which is a rare case. But otherwise, a person who has never had physical bodily hardships, it's extremely impossible for them to really have an appreciation of the Dhamma, for the Dhamma. Because the cornerstone of the Dhamma's teachings, the teachings of the Dhamma, is the understanding and the proper evaluation of dukkha. So whenever I see a person who's in pain, I try to compassionately reach in, if they allow me, without minimizing the experience of pain that they're undergoing, but using the pain itself to allow them to become aware of the significance of it in the grander scheme of things, if you will. Because everybody experiences dukkha, but not everyone is aware of it in the proper way. Everybody's trying to jump out of the pain into where there is pleasure. That is the surest way where you're not going to appreciate dukkha properly. And if you cannot appreciate dukkha, you will never appreciate nirodha, the ending of suffering. You will never know. When I say appreciate, that's also saying you will never experience the ending of suffering. Because what we understand as ending of suffering, what the common person does, is they jump out of the dukkha. What can I do? Let me go and see the dentist. Let me take that Tylenol. Let me take that Panadol. Let me do something. Let me put on some nice music. What am I doing? I'm trying to alleviate the pain, which is everyone's right, obviously. The Lord Buddha didn't say, go ahead and suffer. If there's a way you can heal, by all means. Jivaka was Lord Buddha's personal physician. He used to treat him with different treatments, different medicine, this and that. So Lord Buddha would use medicine. And that's one of the requisites we have as bhikkhus. He didn't say don't take medication, but understand dukkha in its proper context. It's not something to run away from. It is a fact of life. Dukkha, the first law, the first truth, the noble truth. It doesn't say life is suffering. It says there is suffering in life. People still think that Buddhism is all pessimism. If you understand it the first way, of course, you're going to think, oh, where's the ledge? I want to throw myself off the cliff. Let me end it like they done in Western philosophy, Western existential schools. What a waste. No. There is suffering in life. Okay, then the natural following step to that would be, okay, What can I do about it? So you try to understand, okay, or even better, where is the suffering coming from? You have a mother and a son, let's say, a child, and the mother comes to you and says, I can't stand my son. I want to kill him. He never listens to me. I feel like I'm living with a beast. I don't know whose son it is. I don't know. Okay, calm down, calm down. What happened? And you ask the child, and the child says, I have to do this work, that work, homework, this work, that. Eat your food, this and this, and then you're learning piano, and then this and that, and then time to go to bed. Next morning, get up like a machine. Mom wants him to become successful, and so that he could enter this school, Ivy League, or get into university, top somewhere in the world, without seeing the child. Seeing the child. Is there dukkha? Yes. Is the kid suffering from dukkha? Yes. Is the mom? Oh, yes. Lord Buddha is saying, if there's suffering, there's somebody who's attached to something. At least one person. In this case, at least the mom is grabbing on to the goal that she has. Probably she wanted to go to school, but she never was able to. And now she's dumping that load of expectations upon her child. Grabbing that dream. I was describing this to holding on to a red hot coal or fire and saying, why am I in pain? Why am I in pain? Why am I in pain? Who's grabbing onto the hot coal? The pain is a natural reaction. First, the natural reaction of being in a body means you're going to suffer. Old age, sickness, and death. No way out of this. The only way we're going to get out of this place, this body, is through death, folks. Okay? So might as well just appreciate that appropriately. But the second one is the problem. Adding more suffering to life that we do by grabbing on to that hot coal. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Richie. Yes. Yes. The question was, the first question was about bodily hardships that I was answering. Could I say a few words on that? And this question from Brother Vici is about the lokuttara, the term that we have in the Pali. Lord Buddha used to use that. Lokuttara is the supramundane. Supra means above, the mundane. So Lokiya and Lokuttara. And there's joy, and there's supramundane joy. There's Nibbana, they say, is the highest form of sukha. But there's also mundane level of sukha, such as when it's hot outside and you have a lovely pool, or you're by the ocean or sea and you're on a vacation, and you say, oh, it would be nice if I can just take a dip in the water. And you do, and you come out and you're feeling refreshed, and you lay down on the towel, I guess, in the shade, and you go and say to your, naturally, that's sukha. Mundane sukha. Now, I said nibbana, but something that we can all relate with would be the sukha that we feel when we come out of a good sit. When the mind has been maybe even in a jhana, it's so quiet. And you just go, you can't even sigh, that is a different kind of sukha. Was it also conditional? Yes. So, because you had to put some time, pay some effort, do some techniques in a certain way, as taught by Lord Buddha, to get to that. Yes, it had conditions. But compared to the two, one comes and goes. One can be experienced by all people. In fact, even dogs and animals experience that. Sometimes you see a cat laying down, like enjoying it, or a rat even. I've seen rats enjoying, extending their limbs, and it's like, who knows how far it had run, maybe, or maybe it had a really good, filling lunch. Also, they feel good. So sukha is, that's one mundane level. But as far as your second part of the question, which is like, does that have to do with the divine? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. For example, but some might disagree with me on that, because they would say, for example, if you go into the higher jhanas, the infinity of consciousness, or infinity of space, or the realm of nothingness, or the realm of neither perception or non-perception, those compared to the lower jhanas, the first four, they will be seen by many as the supramundane. But again, it's open for interpretation. So you might have bhikkhus or people who will say yes. So anything that is less than nibbana, I don't like to call it supramundane, personally, because that means you still have work to do. Because even the higher jhanas, the highest jhanas, the 8th jhana, for example, some might call it supramundane, but Lord Buddha, as Siddhartha Gautama, had reached it. It still felt empty for him, because he still had raga, he still had tanha, he still had subtle layers of vyapada. The sense of I was still there. He had not removed the dart or poisonous arrow of ignorance from his heart. And that was possible only because he applied the relaxed step by going back to the first jhana, which he had experienced as a baby. And that was as a result of previous lifetimes of practicing meditation, by the way. So I hope that I was able to answer. Yeah, I used to wonder about that. What is mundane? What is? If you read the Visuddhimagga, your head's going to spin. I'm sure he gives some sentences that are very helpful on that. But any other questions, thoughts? Yes, TP.
The question about the four hindrances.
Yes.
In the context of the metta meditation, so when that hindrance comes up and you are drawn to analyzing and philosophizing, how does the metta practice help to counter that? Or
So the question is about how can one apply metta to counter, to address the hindrances, specifically the fourth hindrance, uddhacca kukucca, restlessness and worry or anxiety or remorse. Well, actually, the way you would apply any method, in this case, metta bhavana, in dealing with any of the hindrances would be the same in the case of restlessness. However, what we're talking about is during the meditation. So you're becoming more and more acclimated. So I mentioned about the 6 R's. So when you're recognizing the mind is distracted, you will know. That is, by the way, also Chittanupassana. That's why I say metta bhavana, the proper way of doing it, also includes sati or satipatthana. Meaning, as you're seeing, when you're recognizing a hindrance, what you're doing also is you are practicing Chittanupassana in this case, or even Dhammanupassana, which is the fourth aspect of satipatthana. The chitta would be the third. So you're seeing, oh, I have a mind that is distracted. Why is my heart palpitating? Why is my heart beating so fast? Why am I so worrisome? What is there, like this impending doom upon me, this dark cloud? Why am I feeling? I was doing metta. What happened? So that question itself means that you just did sati to see what was going on and you discovered something other than what was the practice, which was metta. So this is the first step. Most people will see this and they will run back to the object of meditation, which is what I was saying is the way that leads to suppression. That's why many of the 10-day retreats that people go around the world, unfortunately, what many of them are being taught is the Visuddhimagga method, which is suppress. You see the distraction, good, now run back home. Run back to the object of meditation. Well, I haven't learned anything, then it becomes the power of will. If you have strong will, vidya, now, and that's another thing that happens a lot with many meditators who do these long retreats, what we call dry vipassana, or noting, or sensation, just following. It's like you're on it, okay, your mind distracted, bring it back. You almost beat your mind to submission to come back. There's no panya. Do you see the cycle that I did, however, as an alternative route underneath it? So you recognize that you don't take the shortcut. That's a shortcut, just run back. Instead, when you recognize our job is to see the tightness that is occurring, because there's a longing we have not to be on the object of meditation. That's called craving, tanha. Every thought that we have is a result of attachment. Did you know that? Every thought that we have is a result of being attached to something, perhaps a memory, perhaps a sankhara, a tendency, habitual tendency, a habit. Same with feeling. They go hand in hand, feelings and thoughts. So by me jumping back to the object of meditation, I'm not learning anything. I'm convincing myself that no, see, I'm back, take it easy, I'm back. And then you calm down and you might even go to a jhana. But when you come out, you're a miserable person. You're a miserable person because no change has taken place. You just have a very powerful vidya. That's true. That's why even students who have come from Goenka and other Vipassana retreats, and they come to Metta, I say, don't worry, you have plenty of vidya. You have trained yourself. This is wonderful. We can work with this. You can sit longer than others. Good. You can take abuse. Hopefully, I will try to dismantle that, which is difficult. That's why I prefer a person who has no meditation experience at all whatsoever. They can go deep very quickly. So the method to be applied for restlessness is the same as I would apply to any of these other hindrances, the four others. So what is it? Recognizing, which means you're practicing Chittanupassana, as I said, one example. It could also be Kayanupassana or Vedanupassana, but Chitta would be very distinctly looking at the restless mind or the restless heart, depending on how you look at it. So when you see that, you also notice the heat, the temperature. You literally will feel the temples of your head warmer if you touch them. Also, your eyes are moving. It's like REM, rapid eye movement. That also creates heat, it's friction. Muscles are working. You might also be biting your teeth, grinding them. or your throat muscles are tight. Now you're seeing the releasing of the tanha, the hold that you had on that, no, I have to be thinking this, I have to be thinking this, has everything to do with the muscles tightening up. Hence the other step, which is relax. You will never attain Nibbana unless you relax. Okay? Now, some people misunderstand this and they think we have to relax without working. No, it's a balance of virya with passaddhi, tranquility, with samadhi, sorrow, quiet. These are, I'm pointing out now, the bojjhangas. And that's why Lord Buddha says, you will not attain Nibbana without the bojjhangas as tools in your hand. That's the toolbox. So he's given us so many different toolboxes to use. So this is one other toolbox that you could use in a more common modern language. And I was mentioning how even Einstein and other inventors, they've, after all those calculations, they might have spent years, and then there's one step they're missing. They only discovered it whenever they relaxed. But what is the difference? Why should it be different for us as meditators? Isn't that what Lord Buddha did? 6.5 years of torture. And then he says, oh, when I was a kid, I just went into jhana. And I didn't try anything. There was no fighting. I wasn't eating a grain of rice a day to punish myself. I wasn't eating from the poop of birds. That was his sustenance, you know. Or drinking from the water left over from the early morning dew on leaves, dead leaves. I don't have to torture myself. Oh, this is completely different. Einstein was playing the violin when he discovered the general and special relativity theory of relativity, I think. Either one or both. Examples are there. So relaxing automatically means you're now loosening up your facial muscles. And that's when you need to bring in an uplifting feeling or thought. And the easiest way to do that is just wish yourself to be okay. Smile is usually a good thing to yourself. We don't smile to ourselves. And then all of a sudden you find yourself floating, as I said the other day, sliding back into your object, whether metta or something else. How's that? Good? Good. All right, my throat is now gone. So hopefully I'll recover it by tomorrow. So let us transfer some merits. And Brother Theo, I haven't forgotten. Because there's some diacritical marks I have to put. So I can't just spell the name. So there's a proper way of writing his name. I will do it. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu kasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you. And may your practice grow and grow and grow until you taste the truth that is the Nibbana that Lord Buddha himself experienced, which we still have available so long as you're alive, so long as you have the Dhamma, and you do have the Dhamma and you're alive. So the only thing that's missing is Nibbana. Okay, we can do this. Using wisdom. Sadhu.